Yes, the sun still shines here in this beautiful Alsatian region of France. We're up in the northeast. The grapes are getting riper. Yesterday was the prologue time trial. It was in the centre of Strasbourg. The Cathedral of Notre Dame has seen everything. It's never before seen a Norwegian winner of the prologue. That's the finishing line that they're racing back into Strasbourg as we speak. And there's about 2 hours to go before they cross the line. That is the Avenue de la Forêt Nord. It's a sprinter's delight. And of course, we're going to talk about sprinters today. But first of all, let's talk about Thor Hushovd. He is a sprinter.
He is a sprinter, but you know, in the early part of his career, he was regarded as an individual time trialist. But you know, it's the first 10 days of the Tour de France, Phil, that the sprinters come out and show us why they're some of the most courageous men in the sport. And it's the excitement of the last 5 or 10 kilometres of these flat stages, which some people find boring, really get my adrenaline pumped.
All right, well, there's two principal competitions, the yellow jersey for time, of course, and the green jersey for the race on points. And that's what the sprinters are aiming for. Here's how you score it.
Well, it's all about points on a regular basis. Points can be won out on the course at predetermined sprint points, and of course most gained are at the finish. There are 3 intermediate sprints today at Sherwen, at Plobsheim and at Kiel, which is actually in Germany, just outside of Strasbourg. Maximum points, 35 points for a win, down to 22 points for 5th place, and then from 6th down to 25th you can earn yourself between 20 points and a single point.
Thanks very much, Paul. Well, before we go to the live action, this is what happened at the start, about 1 o'clock this afternoon, local time. The Maillot Jaune, Thor Hushovd right on the front rank. 176 riders heading out. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup when these pictures came in earlier. As the field move away here, there was a neutralised pedal of about 15 minutes before they got out to the 0 kilometre point. Here it comes, and that's where the racing began. It took about 3 kilometres for a group of 7 riders to get together, and at 53 kilometres later they were sprinting out the first bonus of the Tour. It was being won by Vogenaar, who snatched a 6-second time bonus, and he's the best placed rider in this breakaway. So he's closing in on that yellow jersey of Thor Hushovd. There's the result of the sprint, 6 points and 6 seconds. So he gets 6 points for the green jersey, 6 seconds for the overall competition, in yellow, of course. So the breakaway continuing to steal a march at the moment, just on about 5 minutes lead for the 7 riders. Fabien Weckman of Gerolstein, Nicolas Portal, Kees Dapern, Unai Echeverria, Stefan Ogier, Benoit Beauregard, Walter Benetton and Mathieu Sprint. And that is the breakaway. These are now live pictures. There's a very entrepreneurial farmer down there, Paul, but there's a super atmosphere in this part of the world.
Well, there is. I think everybody's very happy that Tour de France has come to the northeastern part of France, and definitely this is not a surprise for me to see this breakaway on the first stage. Fabien Weckman has got himself into this group, the rider from Gerolstein, and Nicolas Portal of France, and of course Unai Echeverria in the orange jersey of Euskaltel-Euskadi, Stefan Ogier of France as well. Vorenaar, the man we saw getting the points earlier on, he's in the white jersey there of Crédit Agricole. Walter Benetton is in the group, as well as Sebastian Sprick. But I think what's rather interesting, Phil, is Bouygues Telecom have got 2 riders into this breakaway. They were obviously this morning making sure that they didn't miss out on the move.
The funny thing is, Paul, that the manager of Bouygues Telecom, Jean-Francois Bernard, rather, has just issued a statement on the radio saying he's not sure what's happening yet. He has got 2 men in the break, but he's not sure the tactics.
Well, he definitely didn't want to make the move. You can be absolutely certain that the majority of the riders in this breakaway this morning wanted to get in the breakaway because of the fact this is going to be rather a strange Tour de France. With the big men, Ivan Basso and Jan Ullrich, being taken out, I think everybody wants to try and see what the tactics are going to be over the first few kilometres. It is good to see, though, that Team Crédit Agricole have assumed all responsibility. They're at the front of the pack, keeping the pace and keeping the break at a reasonable distance.
Well, as you can see, the sun is out, but wouldn't it be horrible if the rain was sweeping across the plains today? This is a very exposed course at the moment. So in miles, just on 70 miles left to go at the moment for these riders. There's 7 of them clear, around 112 kilometres. And just to give you the names again, Fabien Weckman of Gerolstein, and Nicolas Portal, Kees Dapern, Unai Echeverria of the Euskaltel-Euskadi team, Stefan Ogier of Cofidis, Benoit Vogenaar of the Française des Jeux, and 2 Bouygues Telecom riders, Walter Benetton and Mathieu Sprick. We expected a breakaway to go because that's the only chance you've got of stealing the stage if you're not a sprinter today. But the peloton now forming a diagonal line there, indicating the wind is coming from the top left-hand corner of the picture. Look at the yellow numbers here. This is an innovation this year, and it means that Team Discovery Channel, who really did put a lot of men up near the leaderboard at the end of the day, Hincap, remember, was second, now were yellow numbers as the leading team in the race. So even without Lance Armstrong, Paul, they still get a little bit of yellow.
Well, that was Jaroslav Popovic there wearing number 7. This is Oscar Freire wearing number 56, and only yesterday towards the end of the afternoon did we find out exactly what happened to Floyd Landis, because it was only in the last few moments of the day we found out that he had a serious problem just before the start. It was a mechanical incident that they tried to repair, and they repaired it just at the very last moment. That was the explanation as to why he missed the start, and that was rather a shame. But I tell you what, he still did a fairly impressive ride anyway, because he wouldn't have been too far away from the win.
No, you're absolutely right, Paul. That's quite true. The information coming to us too, the riders have got through the first hour of race day. Very respectable opening average speed of 44 kilometres. That's about 27.5 miles an hour. Well, remember, the boys in the... Welcome back at day 2 and stage 1 out on the open highway of the Tour de France today, racing out of Strasbourg in a big loop and back into the same city, but a different finish to where the riders started. They're separated by a couple of kilometres. At the moment, with 108 kilometres to go, that's about 70 miles, we have 7 riders in the breakaway, 4 minutes 10 seconds ahead of the pack, who just for the moment at least are not in an angry mood. But there's plenty of time left. There's a small hill just ahead and a couple of more time bonus sprints before we race via Germany back into France. We're in France at the moment, rather. Now, yesterday, it was a big day for the big men in the Tour. It was a timed race, and Levi Leipheimer, one of the big favourites, was involved. Here he is now, just after he finished, talking to Frankie Andreu.
Levi, it's been a while since the Dauphiné. How did the legs feel today after a long break before the start of the Tour?
Not very good, kind of what I expected. I haven't trained very hard since the Dauphiné, and I was afraid that I'd be a little sluggish today, and that's the way I felt. So that's okay. I mean, it's 3 weeks, and I planned it so that it goes well for 3 weeks, not one day. You know, anybody can pop up in the next 3 weeks, and there could be a surprise. But, you know, I think Valverde and Landis are 2 names that come to my mind, maybe Cadel Evans.
And your own chances?
I think they're very good. If I can ride the way I did in the Dauphiné, I think I can win.
Well, you can't be more honest than that. I think I can win. So Leipheimer is up for this race, and he might be doing the best thing there, not having trained too hard before this race began, because it's a tough event, and of course in the next couple of weeks the body and the form will change dramatically. Well, a helicopter down on the ground there. Many of the VIPs who come to the Tour de France get a free flight over the race. They see it the best way, I guess. At the moment, this is stunning scenery here, tucked away as we are up in the northeast corner of France. All around the nation here are different countries like Belgium. Further north is Holland. You've got Luxembourg, and of course they partner Germany here, split by the River Rhine. And the field there, the little man with the board on the left of our picture is indicating, we can't see it just now, the exact gap between the 7 lead riders and the big peloton. With such a long way still to go, they're not going to worry too much at the moment, Paul. They'll continue to admire the scenery, I think.
Well, I think they're quite happy. Crédit Agricole set the pace when they had to make sure this leading group of 7 didn't get too big an advantage. Now, you know, we've still got an awful long way to go. We've still got around about 2.5 hours of racing to go. So as long as they keep it between that 4 and 6 minute margin, I think the teams of the sprinters then will get a little bit more excited down towards the end. They will take over the pacemaking at the front of the peloton, and theoretically these riders should get nailed before the end.
Well, there are 6 teams representing the breakaway, so that's 6 teams that will not be wanting to chase these riders down. They're picking up prizes along the way. The most inexperienced of them is oddly enough, the best placed rider overall, and that is Benoit Vaurenard. He is at the moment in 31st place. Currently, of course, he's the virtual Tour leader here in the breakaway. Still through the little villages here. They're all shut down today, of course, enjoying the moment. It's a Sunday, it's warm. What better can you do in France than watch the national event come racing through? But of course the field is smaller than normal. Only 176 riders from the originally planned 198. The reason is what would become known to us as Operación Puerto, which was a big drug bust in Spain, and as a result, not necessarily having been found guilty of taking drugs, but are listed on a dossier from the Spanish police. These riders were not allowed to start by their teams, including the two big favourites, Jan Ullrich of T-Mobile, Ivan Basso of CSC. The man who finished fourth last year, Francisco Mancebo, AG2R, Oscar Sevilla, a teammate of Ullrich, and Joshiba Bolocki. Remember him? He was the rider that had that terrible crash when up against Lance Armstrong a couple of years ago. And the Vert team, they lost a number of riders as well, and as a result of this, their team didn't have enough riders left on board to start the race. So in effect, the whole team was taken out of the Tour. All very sad, and that of course is an ongoing investigation which will not just encompass the sport of cycling. Football is going to become involved, so too is tennis, basketball and athletics, because there are a lot of other athletes on that list. Anyway, back to the action here now, and this here is the peloton. All of these riders are the faithful teammates of the leader, Thor Hushovd, who is right there in his yellow jersey today. He's worn it for a day a couple of years ago, so it's not new to him. Winning the prologue certainly was, and now of course he's off to a perfect start in defence of his green points jersey, which is the jersey he's really wanting by the end of this Tour. There's the flag of Great Britain riding. Well, there are two Great Britain riders in the race, Bradley Wiggins and David Miller, so they're enjoyed. The flag of the US there as well. There are an awful lot more USA riders in the race, and we know that. After all, cyclists in the USA have won the Tour de France 10 times in the last 20 years. That is incredible. Just two riders, Lance Armstrong and Greg LeMond, and between the two of them, they have put the USA into the third most winning country, and there are only two riders against the big names. Amazing, isn't it? All right, well, let's move on. The Saab Watch and Win Sheepstakes. Here's what you have to do. Log on to olntv.com, fly to the finish every day during the Tour de France for your chance to win great prizes. Now, here's a look at today's code word. There it is for you. It is sprint. Back with the action here now, getting a little bit more excited, I think, these riders at the front, because I would say that Thor Hushovd, even though he's in yellow, is much more interested in getting this race closed down and seeing how he is against Robbie McEwen and Tom Bonan and the other big sprinters in this race. Because really, of all those riders who were taken out of the race by their teams, only Alan Davis, the Australian rider, was considered a real sprinter. So all of the big sprinters are still in this year's Tour de France. The pace has visibly increased. There's a couple of American tandemists. They should be in the Tour de France. Well, that's where we are, and we'll take another short break. See you in a moment. Welcome back. The faces here looking very serious now of the Crédit Agricole team. This is the team, remember, of the race leader and stage winner yesterday in the prologue, Thor Hushovd. I think the order's gone out to try and bring back that breakaway. They know it's going to take quite a while because they got over 5 minutes, but it is coming down now reasonably quickly. As you can see, 4 minutes 22 seconds for the leading group of 7 riders. Now, on long-term prospects in that breakaway of 7, really, there's no one who's going to worry the overall favourites of the Tour. But at this stage of the race, that's not the point. Everybody wants at least a day in that yellow jersey, because they won't be forgotten ever again in the world of cycling once they've pulled it on. And that field there contains a group of 169 cyclists as they chase that breakaway of 7. Well, today the race is not really a challenge for the mountain climbers. We're heading up to that little 4th category climb. They categorise the climbs from ore category, which are the steepest, down to 4th category, which are the smallest. And in this part of the world, they're all small. As we tour the chateaus here and we look out across these mountains, we're not actually in them today. We're racing on the flat roads. And the climb that's shortly to come is the Côte de Heiligenstein, as that will carry a few points, but it will give us a leader in the King of the Mountains for a day or two at least. Well, this is the region, Paul, where the race route isn't going today, full of these beautiful chateaus. Any news on this one? You're pretty good on this.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is quite amazing. This is a massive chateau, and in fact, it's named after the Saint Odile, and Odile was the daughter of the Duke of Alsace. And when she was born, she was actually blind. And when she was baptized, she gained back her sight. But it's also got a lot of history there, because there was a nasty plane accident there in 1992 when a Boeing A320 went down and about 90 people were killed on board. And the investigation is actually only just about to start this year.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing. I knew you'd know the answer, I must say. Thank you very much. Well, the racer now is just on 100 kilometres from the finish. This breakaway, by the way, formed with 3 riders after 3 kilometres. Stéphane Auger, Benoit Vaurenard and Mathieu Sprick got clear, quickly joined by the others, and they built this lead, 7 of them getting up to well over 5 minutes, but it's coming down now quite steadily. There is a chase. You see the arrowhead on the peloton, always the indication that the chase is on. We've just dipped inside, 100 kilometres to go. It's what, 2.5 hours of racing, maybe slightly less, because they'll go quicker and quicker as they approach the finish. And the latest gap is 4 minutes and 28 seconds to everybody else in the Tour de France.
Well, this is the most important part of the stage today for these riders. This is the feed zone at Dolsheim. They've got to keep taking on board as much food. The interesting thing, I suppose, about the Tour de France is when you eat on a race like this, many of the doctors and many of the trainers will tell you that you're not actually eating for today. You're eating for tomorrow and you're eating for next week, because the body can just completely and utterly exhausted of all its energy if you don't keep those energy levels topped up all of the time. That's why it's important to make sure you keep your feed bag on board.
Well, there they are, splitting round the traffic roundabout, traffic circle there. Always a worrying moment in the peloton for the riders who are unsighted. But this part of the region, no problems at all. The feed station, yes, a very dangerous time for bike riders too. So many crashes often occur there as they miss their bags of food and they fall into the wheels of other riders. It looks as though Thor Hushoff has got his men organised well today. They're just doing a nice steady tempo. They're averaging for the whole race today at just over 44 kilometres an hour. They're running exactly on expected schedule. In fact, at the feeding station, the leaders have arrived just 2 minutes earlier than anticipated, so they've got this right today. There's the Mont Saint-Odile sign, where we've just seen the chateau up on the top of the mountain to the right of us, and this is the peloton. This is the back of the breakaway here.
Going to be a long, hard chase, I think, later on, because a lot of people, not only Thor Hushoff is keen on pulling these riders back into the fold, but of course Robbie McEwen and Tom Boonen also would like to make sure that they're sprinting out for the victory on day one. This looks to me at the finish line, Phil, like a finish for Tom Boonen. It's a beautiful long straightaway. He can get his team to lead him out to perfection, and he has brought here a team of specific riders to make sure they put him in the ideal position to take out as many stages as possible.
Yes, I think there's so much up for grabs now with the loss of those big names, Basso and Ulrich and some of their teammates too. A lot of riders now will change the whole sights on this year's Tour de France. And I think from everybody who watches it, of course, they'll take a lot from that, especially as it has not affected the crowds on the ground at all, the loss of those names. They've come here to see the spectacle of the Tour de France, I think.
They certainly have, and one rider out on the road today is having a birthday, Laurent Lefebvre. And an interesting fact about Laurent Lefebvre is he's got a resting heart rate. He has the slowest resting heart rate in the Tour at 32 beats a minute.
Gosh, he's almost dead before he starts riding a bike at 32 to the minute, based on a normal human beings of around about 75. So with the shadows on the ground there, as we look through here, there's an AG2R rider. It looks like Simon Gerrans off to the right there. Well, as the field continue now to eat in, let's remind you about tonight. Tune in tonight as OLN has expanded coverage of the Tour de France, stage number 1, and additional interviews with the American favourites. It's the primetime show, and it begins at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's 9 p.m. Pacific. Daily coverage of the 2006 Tour de France is right here, only on OLN. And the AG2R, a little bit of a smile there off one of the riders. It looks as though it was Sylvain Calzati. He once nearly won very well the Tour de l'Avenir, but he never has quite realised his top form since. Well, let's hope that this year he does it in the Tour de France. He's back in the main field. These are the 7 riders setting the pace, driving on just now. He's a Frenchman on the Spanish team, very unusual that. That's Nicolas Portal. If you watched the classics with us earlier in the year, you will have seen him in the thick of the action. He fell off, in fact, in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. You may remember we gave you full coverage of that at the time. There's the latest gap, 4:37. So they're just holding their own. We're going through the same feeding station now as the leaders went through about 4.5 minutes ago. This is at Dorlisheim. And this is going to take us about 15 kilometers now from the only climb of the day officially, which is the Côte Heiligenstein, just a 4th category hill coming up. More interested in taking on the food today, I think. So as the riders rethink the strategy, usually they start to rethink action once they've gone through that feeding station. They know it's time to go. Anyway, as we head for break, remember the man interested in 2 jerseys at the moment is this man, Thor Hushovd. He's got the yellow, he wants the green as well. We'll find out. We'll be back. Welcome back to the blue skies, the warm sunshine. It is day 2 and stage 1 of the Tour de France. We're in Strasbourg. We're out in the country as I speak. We'll be back in Strasbourg in approximately 2 hours' time. And who will win? At the moment, it could be one of 7 riders. They're holding a lead of some 4.5 minutes over the field, which is more content with taking on food and drink right now beneath this hot sunshine. So this is the main peloton. They've just gone through the feeding station here in Dorlisheim, and they're heading out for the first little climb of the day. Now, we all know that one man who is not here is Lance Armstrong, the winner of the Tour de France for the past 7 years. But we can now check in with the Tour's greatest champion and talk with him, with Lance, on winning 7 Tour de France titles.
Standing up there for the 7th time was a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. I mean, there was nothing on the line. There was no record to break, no real incentive in terms of a typical sports bonus or something. The biggest thing was actually 2 things. Number 1, my kids were there, and I wanted them to see Dad in the Tour, doing his job and going out a winner. And then second thing is just, ending a career, as most athletes want to do. They want to finish on top. You want to hit that game-winning shot at the buzzer and say it's over. And there was an opportunity for me to do that, and I knew at that time, although I flirted with coming back, I knew that it would be hard to top that, and I was getting older. And I joke about it now and tell people that I'm old, but it's true. I mean, in reality, the last couple of years, I was old for the Tour de France. Time to move on.
Yes, indeed. And today's Lance On brought to you by the Nike 10-2 collection, inspired by the man himself. Learn more about Lance and 10-2 at wearyellow.com. Back with the action now as you look at the Crédit Agricole team, as they should be doing, setting the pace to capture those 7 riders away. The gap, 4 minutes 37 now. Still an awful lot of work to go here. Our computer telling us they are 91.9 kilometers, approximately half distance on the day of racing now. They've done 92.6, they've got 91.9 to go. This day of the GPS systems now, we can be so accurate. The riders themselves actually do carry a route in their back pockets, and they'll take it out occasionally and locate by the names of the towns exactly where they are. They need to know how to measure their effort, not just today, but every day now for the next 3 weeks of racing. And if they make a mistake and have a bad day, of course, they could find themselves eliminated from the Tour because they're finishing too far behind.
It's an interesting story you bring up there. Do you remember a couple of years ago, there was a young man riding his first Tour de France. I think his name was Thor Hushovd. He stopped at the side of the road with terrible cramps on a number of occasions. The team manager encouraged him to keep going. He got back on his bike. He rode for a couple of kilometers. He stopped at the side of the road again, and eventually he finished the stage. I think it was stage 1 or 2, just inside of the time limit. Haven't times changed for him, because now he's number 1 on the leaderboard.
Gosh, I do remember that, Paul, but very, very cloudily. I'll give that one to you, but I do remember that happening to Thor, and since then we've met Thor's mentor, who was a great cyclist in this history. He rode for the American 7-Eleven team, Dag Otto Lauritsen. He won a stage in the Tour de France in 1988 at the top of Les Ardennes. Yesterday we couldn't control Dag Otto. He's here with television now, and he was running all over the place because this kid who once came up and said could he go cycling with him, well, I think he was 11 years of age, and Dag says sure you can, turned out to be Thor Hushovd, and now of course Thor is even better than Dag ever was.
Absolutely, because he's worn the yellow jersey on 2 occasions now. And it's going to be very difficult to wrest that yellow jersey off his shoulders, I would think, towards the end of today, because he has got the ability to get himself in the top 3 at the end of the day, to get himself some time bonus points as well. And I'm sure he'll be looking at that, because he said before the start of this Tour de France that one of his main aims was to go for the green jersey. Now, if he wants to do that, he's got to get himself in the top 3 on a number of occasions, and that, in the early part of the Tour, should keep him in yellow.
Well, I still think, as we were talking earlier, Paul, it's going to be Stuart O'Grady who might try to spoil the party here. The man from Adelaide in South Australia. He's had a big chunk of the season out with a very nasty crash. He's come back and he's stronger than ever. He'll be in the mix for the big sprinting today, I'm sure of that. Well, there's a nice shot of the peloton as we look over the back of them here. Very, very nice indeed. And the crowd as big as ever. The doping controversy 48 hours before this tour began has done nothing to affect the people who have come here to watch the Tour de France. This will supersede any scandal as it starts its journey around France. All right, well, it's time for a look at today's subway trip stage. Thor Hushovd, of course, and there he is. Different colour today. He's got the leader's yellow jersey for the best on time, but even so, his sights are still fixed on winning that green jersey again. And the team's changing at the front as the breakaways continue to work together here to try and keep clear of the field. Well, we're in a very pretty part of the area at the moment here, and I'm sure that the riders will be a little bit pleased, Paul, that they're in the trees area. Of course, as they speak, they go back out into the open again. But in fact, although it's very, very hot today, Paul, at least when you're a cyclist, the air does cool you down a bit.
You do get that little bit of a breeze factor, probably bringing the temperature down 4 or 5 degrees. We're well over 30 degrees Celsius here this afternoon, and even riding through a shaded part of the road like this, it helps the riders not feel the heat that they're going through, especially when you're stuck out on the open roads. It'll get a lot hotter, the Tour de France, this year, because I think we're going to have a very warm Tour de France with temperatures in the south of the country probably rocketing up to almost 40 degrees.
Yes, and we're going down to Bordeaux, which is often a sprinter's delight down there, but that's the flatter roads, as that this year will enter the gateway, in effect, to the first major climbs of this year's Tour. The Pyrenees, where we'll just tickle Spain and come back into France, and then we move across the bottom to the Languedoc and the beautiful Camargue area of France. It's such a varied country, this one. And then up through the Alps, which is very hard in the final week. But it looks as though the Crédit Agricole squad now, Hushovd has communicated with them, lift the tempo, take us up towards 48, 49 kilometers an hour. It's time to start bringing back the breakaway. But looking at the time checks at the moment, Paul, around 4.5 minutes, they're not really making any inroads.
Well, actually, I think they've got it locked in at the moment at this 4 to 4.5 minute mark. They're not too keen on pulling it back that rapidly. They want to time their effort. They don't want to make too violent an effort to pull that breakaway back too soon, because what that does is it opens up the possibility of other attacks. Much better to ride at a reasonable tempo, keep the breakaway within arm's length, and then turn the screws up a little bit later on. And of course, if you do keep it nice and close, you've also got the big possibility of having assistance from the sprinters' teams down towards the end.
Well, we're looking at one of the VIPs. I'm afraid I don't know who it is, but she's got the best seat in the house there. She sits behind the main group here as the 7 riders continue to now go through a very large crowd. Now, this crowd must be knowing something. The roads locally have obviously brought them to a particular point on the course as we start this what is small climb, the Côte de Hellisgenstein. Not a big climb, this, but the man who wins it tonight will pull on the polka dot jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains. So I think we can expect quite a sprint here.
It's going to be a big sprint, because it's the first chance for some of these teams to get a bit of publicity out of the Tour de France. It is a very small pimple on the race route here this afternoon. Not a very difficult race route, a lot more difficult tomorrow.
Watch out for 47, Gerolstein's Fabian Weckmann, Paul, because he won the King of the Mountains in the Giro a couple of years ago, but he wore the leader's jersey in this race last year as well.
Yeah, he's a very crafty rider, Fabian Weckmann. That's him sitting in the middle in the light blue jersey, looking over his shoulder. The crowd is all over the road here. These guys are waiting to see when they spot the barrier over the top of the race to know when to start their sprint, and they've started now.
Well, these are the massive crowds like we'll expect to see when we go into Luxembourg, Belgium and indeed Holland on these narrow roads. But right now it's a massive sprint for the summit. Wegman is going for it here as we expected. He was the leader just for a couple of days in the King of the Mountains. He's a specialist on these small hills. Our camera couldn't get through. We'll have to wait for the official result, but that was a mix there of 3 riders heading up towards the summit of the climb. There's the line just there. Looks to me as though Wegman has got it. He's right on the nose of that group.
Well, that's, I think Wegman up the front there is a pale blue jersey, so it probably is Fabian Wegman. The important thing, well, this is Ekimov.
Yes.
This is a problem for Ekimov at the back of the group, and it's just a mechanical problem. Rear wheel change. There's Johan Brunel pushing him away. Ekimov, one of the greatest riders in the race. You know, he's been around forever. He rode the Olympic Games in 1988, got himself a gold medal then, and then got himself a gold medal in 2000.
I don't think he'll ever retire. He's on tour number 14. He's just 2 short of the record held by Joop Zoetemelk of Holland. And Ekimov has never retired in a single Tour de France. A most remarkable man. And Lance Armstrong loved him on the same team when he was here.
Phil, I don't like to correct you very often, but I think it's his 15th Tour this year.
Is it?
I think it is.
I'll have a look. Keep talking.
Yeah, you know, Ekimov has ridden it. I don't think he's ever abandoned the Tour de France either. He's such a competitive rider. You know, he's amazing to think that a number of years ago he held 11 world records on the track, and he turned across to become one of the first riders to participate in the Tour de France for Russia.
You're right. He's on his 15th Tour, Paul. Finished 14. So we're looking now as Ekimov continues his plans of finishing his 15th Tour. Then he'll only be 1 short of Joop Zoetemelk. I'm sure he'll be back next year for that. There's the speed right now, just short of 50 miles an hour as Ekimov tries to get back into the race. Well, he's fighting his way back into the race, and here's something special for you. OLN comes out swinging with Fight Night, and this is the hard-hitting action which includes live bouts above Adam's top rank and legendary battles featuring Ali and Leonard and Hearns. That's Fight Night. It premieres live Thursday, July the 27th, right here on OLN. And Ekimov could probably do well at boxing as well. He's now racing his way back into the peloton. A routine tyre change. No big pressure here because the peloton aren't going that quickly. There's the result of the climb. So the first King of the Mountains of the Tour de France is Fabian Wegman. He has been there before. He was there briefly last year. He won't climb the big mountains well. He likes the little ones though. And Sprick, another first timer in the Tour, gets second, and Unai Echeverria, who can climb the big mountains quite well, has taken some minor points there, 1 in fact for 3rd place. So we've got our first leader and of the day. That's Fabian Wegman. He's in the polka dot jersey. There's the battle for the top of the climb. A massive crowd. This Tour de France just gets more popular than ever. Ekimov, he's back in the action, but this is how they change his wheel. Brunel's in the thick of it as well. We'll take a break and we'll see. Welcome back. You're just in time. This is the peloton now topping this climb. A bit of a narrow fit, I think, for the riders in the big pack. The only climb of the day and a massive crowd. But the King of the Mountains points for the day have all gone with that leading group of 7. So it's just tempo riding here from the teammates of Thor Hushovd, and they're the Crédit Agricole boys, a French team being led today by a Norwegian in that yellow jersey. Well, they're all concentrating on the climb. The crowd are enjoying the moment. It is so warm. Beautiful blue skies. That's the top of the climb. They're now going to go downhill. It's just on 80 kilometers or 50 miles to race to the finish. A lot of work to be done as we go up to the leaders. This is Unai Echeverria. And at the back of the group, Nicolas Portal of France. But he rides on the Spanish team. 7 riders, 4:39. They're holding their own with 48 miles to go. Well, the time gap indicating, Paul, 4 minutes 39, the latest one. 78 kilometers left. You'll have to start bringing in your little formula shortly to tell me if they're going to get caught.
Well, I'd have a guess right now they will get caught. It's pretty much locked in. You've only seen basically one team doing the pacemaking. That's Crédit Agricole. They're keeping it locked in at that. I think they feel safe if they've got it between 4 and 6 minutes, because they know then that, of course, Team Quick-Step will come to the front for Tom Bonen. And I'm sure they'll get a fair amount of assistance as well from Team De Vitamon Lotto of Robbie McEwen, because McEwen, I think, would like to try and get the yellow jersey. He lost himself 50 seconds in the prologue, but don't forget the race in a couple of days' time is going to Belgium, and Robbie was pretty vocal saying, well, I've lost a lot of time in prologues before. I've lost as much as 50 seconds. This time I've only lost 28 seconds. I think he probably wants to have the yellow jersey when the race goes to Belgium.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about. Now, let me tell you, the green jersey competition, a race on points, was brought into the Tour de France to give the sprinters reason for continuing round to Paris when the big mountain started, and they really haven't got a chance of winning anything. And so they've made this special competition there. What Paul is telling us is happening right now too, because the quick-step team of Tom Bonan have come to the front and they've picked up the tempo. And the competition, just to complete the tale for the green jersey, started in 1953, and over these last few years has been a terrific battle amongst the English-speaking riders. I have to say, primarily Robbie McEwen and Baden Cook, two Australians who have won it recently 3 times. And let's face it, Robbie McEwen would have won it last year if he hadn't have been declassed in one of the sprints when he appeared to headbutt his old rival Stuart O'Grady. No points on the day by Paris cost him the win.
I don't think it was a headbutt. I just think they were trying to stop each other falling off.
Decision, I think, by the judges.
Yep, it did.
Stuart O'Grady wouldn't agree, of course.
Of course not, but I think it did cost him the victory that year because it changed his idea. It changed his whole outlook on the Tour. He lost so many points in one day that then I think he decided to just go for individual stage victories. And he didn't do too badly at that, did he?
I remember seeing Robbie 2 days later, and he shouted across on the finishing line, "What do you think of that? What's your opinion, Phil?" And I said, "Oh, I'm neutral on this, Robbie. Don't want to get too involved." Because we like Stuart as well.
Well, we like all the Australian riders. They're all fighters, they're all battlers, and it's good to see them. Let's not forget Stuart O'Grady was pretty close to winning the green jersey competition as well a couple of seasons ago. And I suppose now we're going to have to accept Thor Hushovd as an English speaker.
So here we have these 7 riders, 4:18. All of a sudden, you see, they've sent up extra teammates now. The Milran team are coming up as well. That's the team of Eric Zabel, the light blue jersey. You can see 4 back. They're helping now the Crédit Agricole. Now, when they start to drive, what's that time gap fall? It's down to 4:18 now. 47 miles to go. This is becoming now a real chase to wrap them all up and get those 7 riders back in the field here. Okay, well, now it's time for the 10-2 moment, which is brought to you by Nike. And this is a chance to see Lance Armstrong in action again. So our 10-2 moment today, the battle here of stage 15 in 2003. You all remember it on the race to Luzardie-Dun. Lance amongst the leaders, oh dear. Lance hooks a spectator's handbag, drags him off the bike. He gets back on it again. Now, at that moment, he told me later, I believe I've lost the Tour, was his thoughts that went through his mind. It got worse as he continued to chase back. But at the end of the day, all worked out. Lance regained his time. He kept his leader's yellow jersey, and he went on to win the Tour. So for more great stories, go to weareyellow.com. That's our Nike 10-2 moment. Well, Lance, of course, not in the Tour de France, but his ghost is. We're always thinking about him, and Lance, no doubt, watching the action today. Mixed feelings, I would think, whether he'd want to be here or not. He's seen his best mate in the peloton, Vyacheslav Ekimov, puncture, but get back safely into the field. He's now seeing a routine chase forming now, with a number of the teams deciding to help out Crédit Agricole and catch these 7 riders. 4 minutes 16 is now the latest time check, and we're heading down towards 46 miles to go. Now, once we enter 25 miles to go, we should be on German roads, and we'll come off them about 3 miles from the finish, and it is a beautiful road to finish on today. The Avenue de la Forêt Noire. 4:15, you see, there we are. As it comes down, it is continuing to come down in the beauty of the Alsace region of France. We'll take a break. It'll probably be even less when you come back on the other side. This is the Tour de France live on OLN. Welcome back with the Tour de France again, as we're now looking at the leaders here, but their gap is coming down alarmingly quickly now. We're very close to 4 minutes as the other teams are now taking up the chase. They started 3 kilometers out. We're on the Circuit de Strasbourg. We're way out in the countryside. Well, yesterday was the prologue time trial, and the Americans didn't let the side down in any way at all. A little bit of a problem for Floyd Landis. He got over that and produced the ride of his life in the time trial. There's the latest gap for you now. 4 minutes it is, as the peloton have got a lot of help here now. But the Americans, now let's have a look at the situation with the American riders in that opening prologue time trial. They wanted to show the world they were on form, and this is where they stand after it. Hincapie, last to start in the time trial, finished up with the second best time. He lies second, Zabriskie third. Floyd Landis, despite a flat tyre just before the off, finishes 9th. Chris Horner 19th and Bobby Julich 29th, and there are more Americans in this race. Van der Velde got the nod a couple of weeks before the Tour. He's in it again, 35th, a good ride. Levi Leipheimer there, 36th. Now Leipheimer, as you will have heard earlier on in our program, didn't train too hard before the Tour. He wanted to let himself nicely into this race, so he's very confident, and he said it himself, he can win this year's Tour de France. And as this race develops over the next 3 weeks, we are going to see Levi Leipheimer right up with the leaders in the mountains, I'm sure of that. So there's the gap, as we've just in the last couple of minutes, they've lost a couple of minutes. 3 minutes 58 is the gap now. Rapidly coming down now, Paul, inside 4 minutes now, so the catch, your estimation, will come in what, 20 kilometres, 30 kilometres?
I would think they'll leave it for about 30 kilometres. They don't want to bring it down too quickly, because if you do catch the break, then all of a sudden you open yourself up to counter-attacks. So sometimes it's better just to have the breakaway hovering there, because it negates any attacks happening. And that's probably what they'll try and do. And it's not a full-on chase at the moment, although they have got reinforcements from Team Milram, have sent some riders to the front for Eric Zabel. Robbie McEwen has sent a rider to the front from De Vita Monlotto, and of course we've seen the quick-step riders pretty much up to the front as well.
Just looking at the rider nearest camera here now, 104, Juan Manuel Garate. Now the Spanish Championships, the week before this Tour de France was held, was up in arms, and the riders went on strike because of that drug scandal, which we've fully reported over the last few days, called Operación Puerto. And the riders in the end made a ceremonial start and all climbed off the bikes, and the championship was cancelled. And so they said Garate would retain the jersey which he'd won the previous year as champion, but he wasn't wearing it there.
No, he wasn't. I noticed he had the Spanish national bands on his arms, but obviously he doesn't want to inherit the title after a protest probably by the riders, and that's probably a fairly brave decision to make.
Well, this man had no problems pulling on the maillot jaune last night as winner of the prologue time trial. He wore the jersey once before, a couple of years ago, very briefly for one day, and that was a huge thing for Norway, I can tell you. But now he has won the prologue. That's another first for Norway, and as a result of that, he leads the race today after winning the prologue time trial yesterday. So the peloton getting themselves organised. Just looking here, the sun's still very high in the sky. The local time here, by the way, is coming up to 4 o'clock now, and so the sun is as high as it will be today, and probably as hot as it will be as well. There's all the names for you in this leading breakaway. At one stage, the early breakaway contained 4 riders. They were all French, and I can tell you our computers were smoking. So proud they had 4 French leaders. All right, well, don't forget to go to olntv.com. There you will find the latest updates on the Tour de France. You'll get up-to-the-minute expert analysis, recaps and race routes, the track contenders, the leaderboard results and the exclusive rider forecast. At olntv.com, that's your link to the cyclism and the Tour de France. Huge crowds on the roads around Strasbourg today. Still French here. Mind you, about 70 years ago, they would have probably been standing in Germany, but they gave this piece of the world back to France in 1918. And this breakaway containing a lot of French riders today, and that's going to give the organisers a big fillip. They're desperate for a French winner. There was one stage, and I thought the only Frenchman we'd see on the winner's podium every day this next 3 weeks would be Bernard Hinault, and he's not riding the race, but he's part of the organisation and helps present the leaders' jerseys. I might have been very unfair with that comment, because there are 2 or 3 French riders this year now showing very good form and will want to take part in this year's Tour de France. And there's one of them there, because this is the Bouygues Telecom. They've got 2 riders up here, Walter Benetton and Mathieu Spreek. Between them now, have ridden 9 Tours de France, Spreek in his second. He was a rookie in the race last year. 3 minutes 55 now, the gap. As the main field, which is what we're looking at here, a lot of different coloured jerseys there on the front, which indicates now, I think there's probably 4 or maybe 5 different teams starting in the chase. That gap is going to continue to come down, maybe 20 kilometres or so, and they'll be bringing them all back together. All right, let's take another break. We're back on the Route du Tour de France as we follow stage number 1 here after the start yesterday, which was won in that prologue time trial by the Norwegian Thor Hushovd. Help is at hand now. There is the red jerseys there of the De Vitamin Lotto squad of Robbie McEwen. Right on front here are the blue jerseys of the world champion sprinter Tom Bonan. The gap is now exactly 4 minutes. It was at one stage 5.5. There is just 41 miles left to race, and the tempo riding has been lifted now. We've stayed away from the hills which abound here in Germany and France, and they're racing the flatlands today, and that means this is one of the rare chances for the sprinters, the greyhounds of the Tour de France, to strike, and that is why they're now trying to bring back the leaders. Just looking at the bottom of the screen there, that's the result more or less of the time trial yesterday. That's the situation over. Watch out for Stuart O'Grady. He is a very good sprinter, and he is best placed here. If he snatches a win bonus, could be the next rider in the yellow jersey. And Floyd Land is sitting there in 9th place, but he had a problem with his bike at the start. All right, also though, don't forget to log on to olntv.com. Fly to the finish every day during the tour, because that's your chance to win great prizes. Here's today's code word, and it is sprint. Right, guard your distances, it says. Well, right now, I think the riders would like to bring the distance down a little bit. 4 minutes is still a few kilometers between the two groups. As they race over this little bridge over an auto route here, now heading in towards the leaders. We've climbed ahead with the 7 men. They are 4 minutes now. They're just holding this leader 4 minutes. Unai Echeverria wants to see his team. I suspect he wants another drinking bottle on board here. Very important they take on a lot of fluid today, perhaps as much as 8 or 9 litres, because it is extremely hot. Gap nosing out just a little bit. The rider in the Française de Jeu colours is the leader of the Tour on the road just now. He's the white jersey there of Benoit Vonrenard, a first-time Tour rider, and at the moment is the yellow jersey Virtual. There he is. Must be feeling pretty pleased with himself.
Well, actually, it's rather interesting to see the composition of this leading group, because, Phil, if you look at the guys who are in the breakaway, a lot of them were right at the back end of the field in the individual time trial yesterday. Stéphane Auger finished 171st. Nicolas Portal was right behind him in 172nd, and Fabian Wegman was almost last at 175th. But I think Wegman may well have crashed, because I've just noticed the bandages on his knee and elbow, and that might be an explanation why he's looked for the breakaway here this afternoon.
That's very possible. He is a man that tends to feature very early on in major stage races. That was how he came to win the King of the Mountains a couple of years ago in the Tour of Italy, which is a race over the same distance of 3 weeks. He's not a high mountain climber. He admits he can't climb the high mountains, yet he won the King of the Mountains, even though the Dolomites and the Italian Alps were included in that route. And the reason was he went out on the early breakaways. On that occasion, he won the very first climb of the Tour of Italy, exactly as he's done this week in the Tour de France.
Yep, that's what a lot of riders do. They earn that kind of reputation as being attackers, and that's what they like to do. Starting to look a little bit more serious in the main field. They're stretching out into a very long line as the pressure starts to be applied by the teams of the sprinters, who want to spoil the party for these 7 men who went out on the early morning raid.
Nicolas Portal, the man in black, which is the Case d'Apan colours here, Spanish team, and he sits there. There's a Frenchman on it. The riders are, and the light blues are from Bouygues Telecom, French team, which should be very happy to have 2 men in the breakaway. But the gap is still coming down, as the riders now are going to have to work something out special, I think. Just looking here, 3:55 now is the gap. They've more or less ridden at the same pace as the peloton for these last few kilometres after they started to eat quickly into their lead. That's sort of stopped right now in amongst the trees. Usually when we start to lose the pictures a little bit, but we're holding on. When we come back after the break, we're going to tell you a little bit more about the man who wears the yellow jersey but really wants to win the green jersey. I'm talking, of course, of Thor Hushovd. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the Tour de France. Here are the riders now. The Quick Step boys are taking part in the chase of the 7 riders who are ahead. It's Strasbourg today. We're in and out of the big city, and the race is now heading back home, but we're still to go through Germany before we go back into France. So these are the 7 leaders. The gap continues to come down. There they are. 3:48 now is the latest gap. Just 60 miles to go, or 60 kilometers, 38 miles to go. And so that means that the peloton are really going to have to start working on this one now. Nicolas Portal, he's been up there since the 3rd kilometre of the race today, which is an incredible performance by him. So he's been in the lead now for 121 kilometres. And then the other riders joined in, including Fabian Weckmann. He was the last one to catch up. He's now the first leader in the King of the Mountains. And the gap is 3:43. It has got to keep a move on, but I can't see it staying away for much more than about 10 miles or so before the riders get reeled in by the sprinters teams who want these men back in the fold. Remember that when we race back into Germany and then across Germany, we'll race back into France. We are very, very close to the finish. There's an ambitious cameraman. He's got a long walk back to his car after he's panned the peloton by in the Tour de France. All right, well, let's have a look at our athlete profile, and it is, of course, Thor Hushovd.
My name is Thor Hushovd. I'm riding on Crédit Agricole. Last year I won the green jersey, which was a big goal for me and a big dream. This year my goal is winning a stage the first week. We have me for the green jersey and sprint stages, and we have Pietro Calcioli for the final. And then we have goals that the riders go in breakaways, show the jersey on television. That's important as well, and maybe get a stage win the days there is a breakaway. I train a lot in mountains. If not, I can never pass them. That's a part to be a rider. You have to be fast in the sprint, but you also have to ride long climbs up to 7 hours. So you have to be good on everything to just come to Paris. Yeah, but I mean, it's hard.
When the conditions are hard, wet, cold, that's when the big Viking comes out and, you know, he rips it up.
Yeah, last year when I came into Paris on Champs-Élysées with a green jersey, and I knew I could win, the jersey was really special. To come in there and be riding in the middle of Paris, so many spectators will look. As a rider, it's a big moment, special moment, yeah.
Indeed, our athlete profile by Hampton Hotels, and what a great athlete Thor Hushovd is. He's 28 years of age now, stands at 6 feet. He is a sprinter, and as we've seen, a pretty good time trial rider as well. He's now won the prologue in the Tour de France, and he was the points champion, the green jersey winner a year ago. Add to that, he's won 3 Tour de France stages in 02, 4 and 6. What a man. Boy, anybody would settle for half of what Thor Hushovd has done, and at 28, he's still got a chance of improving on all of those honours he already has. Very serious mood now. 3:36 the gap. Tempo visibly lifted. We've got 2 riders up from Quick Step, 1 from Team Milram to help out the Crédit Agricole. I think quite likely, Paul, these boys will get a little bit annoyed if Robbie McEwen doesn't order up a couple of his teammates.
Well, he's got a teammate up there, and I'm sure Robbie will send some guys up, but look how long that main field now is starting to get. We're inside of 40 miles to go to the finish, inside of 60 kilometres, and they now realise this is the time to pull it all back together.
Well, this is life at the back. Water, of course, is very important for Benoit Vorenard. Even though he's being chased down, he's the leader still of this Tour de France on the road, but the time gaps have got to be kept by the time you cross through the timing equipment at the finishing line. Team management there shouting a few time checks at him, I'm sure of that. 57.6 kilometres remain now to around about 36 miles. I know many of you like us to convert kilometres and miles as we go along, because not everybody knows kilometres and miles.
Well, they certainly don't. It's always difficult to do it on the fly, though, and that's why now and again one does make a little mistake one way or the other. But just notice the team manager who came up alongside there for the Française des Jeux was a guy by the name of Martial Gaillon. I used to race with him, and he actually participated in the Tour de France on 4 occasions and won himself a stage, I think.
He did. He was a very consistent rider too, and Martial now into management. A lot of cyclists, they go one of 2 ways if they've made their reputation in the sport. They either go into the management of the teams, or they join us on the commentary box positions here, where there are many top ex-cyclists working with us on the Tour de France. So we're looking here now at a hard-working bunch of riders. Look at that gap falling down now. 3:23 now, 35 miles to go to the finish. And these boys now know that they're doomed, but they will make that peloton chase them down. They won't surrender. As we take yet another break, the Tour de France is about to go alight again. We'll see in a moment. Welcome back. This is the Tour de France live here on OLN. There's no better way to watch this race as the riders now close in on a breakaway of 7 men. A breakaway which started after just 3 kilometers of the day. And look at the gap now. 2 minutes and 58 seconds, 33 just over miles to go. These boys are going to get caught. It's only a question of when. Big Johan van Summeren there now, sent up by the sprinter Robin McEwen to start the chase. The rider in the light blue there is a teammate of Eric Zabel, another big sprinter who's trying to get in on the action. And Sebastian Lang, as you saw, was the time trial rider yesterday. He'll be working for his teammates like Peter Rollick today to try and put them in the frame for a sprint victory too. This is now a serious chase here. This is the situation we're sliding through the bottom of the screen for you in the overall categories. Floyd Landis 9th, despite a flattening tyre yesterday. Is the yellow jersey of the man who won yesterday, Thor Hushovd. He's a very, very fast sprinter, and so he could even win this race. If he won the stage today, by the way, he'd be the first man to win in the Maillot Jaune since Cipollini, Mario Cipollini, in 1997. And there's that for you too. The yellow jersey he was wearing when the great sprinter from Italy crossed the line first in the town of Vire, which is over the other side of France, but still in the north of the country. 2:48. And 2:40. You see, I go away for a few seconds and the time keeps coming down. 2 minutes 40 now. This is a tremendous chase back. It just shows you how these boys, they've got clocks in their brains, you know. They can work it out to such perfection. Well, while they continue now to chase on and bring that gap down to a manageable height, let's remind ourselves of what else is coming your way on OLN. And tonight, it's the original series here. IPT King of the Hill 8-ball shootout will continue. Hall of Famers hustlers hope to rack up $1 million, and that is the richest payday in the history of the sport. The IPT King of the Hill 8-ball shootout tonight at 7 p.m. only, of course, right here on OLN. Now let's have a look what's happened to the time checks, because they are closing in all of the way now. A lot of help from the quick boys, and it's 2:35, the latest gap. It is amazing, Paul, just how fast these riders can slice down the times when they want to at 52 kilometers to ride.
It certainly is, and they always seem to get it just to perfection, and that's what the teams of the sprinters are doing. They're calculating all the time. They're trying to figure out how tired the guys at the front of the race are, and then how much pressure they actually need to exert. You
were a rider 7 times in the Tour, Paul. You can answer the question that people all too often ask me. Why do breakaways go ahead of the race if they know they're going to be caught before the finish? I've never got really the answer to that question.
It's a good question, and I hope I'll try and give you a good answer. Basically, what the guys who go in the breakaway are doing is hoping that the main field will get it wrong, because they do on a number of occasions get it wrong, and we do see breakaways succeed, and that's why these guys go out to try and get themselves a little bit of glory. Even if this breakaway gets caught, 2 riders in this breakaway have actually got something out of their long day in the saddle. For Fabian Wegmann, he's got himself the King of the Mountains lead, and of course for the young rider Veronard, he's got himself the lead in the young riders classification. So even if they've got caught, they've certainly got something out of their hard day.
Absolutely, and of course there are prizes for all of these sprints along the route. The next sprint, by the way, will come at 47 kilometers to go, just under 30 miles from the finish. So they should stay away for that sprint. It carries small bonuses as well as prizes, and it could give Veronard another 6 seconds time bonus, and it might be crucial over the coming days of the Tour de France.
It might be crucial. He started the day 19 seconds off, and he's climbed up to 13 seconds off, and in fact that 13 seconds off moves him up into a top 15 place at the moment. It's 2 minutes 30 seconds.
And there are so many riders here who would like to win. And it is an interesting fact, isn't it, Paul, that if Hushovd does cross the line in first place, you know, he'll be the first man wearing the yellow jersey since the great Mario Cipollini won in 1997 wearing the yellow jersey.
Well, Mario Cipollini gave us so much to talk about. He certainly was a great character in the sport. It was a sad day when he retired, but he always had something special to show us on the roads of the Tour of Italy and, of course, on the Tour de France. We crossed the canal here over the Rhine, the Rhone to the Rhine, I should say.
It links the Rhone and the Rhine, yes, and that's a great canal too. Of course, they transport many things on the waterways here in Europe, and their big barges draw about 15 feet of water, some 5 meters of water, so they can load them up and get going right across Europe on canals. They used to do it in Great Britain, but really that fell away around the war years. And there is the mouth of the Rhone here, which splits France with Germany, as the Tour de France will shortly be in Germany. And of course, we're going to be right with them here. It's a question of whether it will be the whole field or will there be 7 leaders. Not far away to the next time bonus sprint. You'll be with us when we welcome back the peloton we're looking at here. We're on our circuit in Strasbourg. We are not too far from the finish, around about 48 kilometers, some 30 miles. In fact, 48.9 and 30.4 miles. There you go. The gap is coming down quickly now, 2:09. And we are approaching the sprint at Plobsheim, and that comes at 47 kilometers to go. Well, the sun on the right shoulders now, the shadows there. 2 minutes and 7 seconds is the gap. As these riders know they're doomed, it's only a question of when they are picked up. We're looking here at number 159. He still remains the leader of today's stage of the Tour de France on the road. That is Benoit Vogrenard, and we're coming up now to the second sprint of the day. I think he'd be interested in taking a small 6-second time bonus here. That was the 1 kilometer to go. We're at Plobsheim, leaving us for once we pass the line. 47 to race to the finish. We'll be shortly in Germany, and we'll stay there till around 4 or 5 kilometers when we race back into France.
I think it will be very important for the young man there, Vogrenard, to actually try and get himself the 6 seconds. He's moved himself up to 13 seconds off the lead. That would take him just that little bit closer, and always the risk and always the hope that he might survive to the finish today and have a good chance at getting the overall lead. That's why guys do this.
Well, Unai Echeverria, the Spanish rider, won't be interested. He's the orange jerseyed rider. Coming through in the black is Nicolas Portal. He might have a little go as he tries to get through, but the two Boy Telecom riders, Walter Benito, Mathieu Sprick. Watch for the rider in white. He's got a very good position here now to take this, but he doesn't want to go through now because that's a little bit too close to the sprint as he comes through and moves over.
Did you see the way he just looked under his arm there? What he's looking for to see was who was on his wheel. This is a little move. This is the move by Walter Benito.
Well, Benito, and there comes the reaction now from Beauregard. He needs this 6 seconds. They could be valuable later. I don't think he's going to get them. This is a flat-out effort here by Benito, who was second at the previous sprint a long way ago, 90 kilometers back, in fact. It looks as though Vogrenard has got second, and third is the other rider on Telecom, which will be Mathieu Sprick.
Well, that was a crafty move. You see, Benito is a very clever bike rider, Phil. He's been around for a number of years, and he knew exactly how to catch everybody by surprise there. Vogrenard almost smiling at that. He got caught out, and he knows it.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a good sprint, you know, Paul. As we see here, the gap is closing. In fact, the attack that was made there by Benito was incredible, and he went so quickly, it really left no chance. Because Vogrenard was blocked in, he had to get round the other riders, and he had no chance then because the bird had flown the coop by then, and Benito got revenge from the earlier sprint, amazingly, 90 kilometers ago. Well,
I tell you what, very often I talk about a tough bike rider, but Benito on that occasion was a very clever bike rider.
Yeah. And you need to be clever because sometimes everybody's legs are tired and the brain gets you out of trouble.
Well, it's actually a pretty nice day in the saddle for Vogrenard because that gives him a 10-second total time bonus gained this afternoon, and that's going to put him right up alongside Floyd Landis in the overall classification if the race catches this leading group of 7 riders and Vogrenard obviously finishes in the same time as the main field at the end.
And that's very important, especially if you are a French rider and you're in your first Tour de France as well. Mum and Dad get on the telephone and say, you're doing great, son. You're 9th in your first Tour de France. That's incredible. Well, we're now in Plobsheim. This is the town which will lead us now into Germany. 46 kilometers still to race. The peloton, they're already at the 1 kilometer part of the sprint here, so they're not that far behind now.
They're still pretty much stretched out in a long arrowhead at the front end of the main field. We're in that moment. This is a sort of a lull before the storm here. These riders will start to really pick it up as we get closer to the finish line in Strasbourg, and then there will be an awful lot of risks happening as riders try to place themselves and make sure they don't use too much energy in the last 15 or 20 kilometers.
Well, the sprint is, as we saw it, confirmed on our computers from the race organisations. Benito, Vogrenard and Sprick in that order, which means they get 6 points, 4 points and 2 points for the green jersey competition, and you get 6 seconds, 4 seconds and 2 seconds in the overall race for the yellow jersey competition. Looking down at the peloton now, 2:06. Once we're inside 2 minutes, I think at least from our helicopter, we should see both of the groups of riders down there, the leading 7 and the peloton. And then I think the chase will really be on. All right, well, also, don't let us forget to log on to olntv.com/fly to the finish every day during the tour for your chance to win great prizes. And remember, here's a look at today's code word. It's sprint. Well, the shadows are right above the riders now. The height of the day coming up to 4:30 in the afternoon. The riders always time to finish around about 5:30 for television purposes in Europe, and so they're bang on schedule today. And the gap, funnily enough, there was a little bit of turning off of the gas at the back there in the peloton. It's gone out a little bit again to 2 minutes 15. Has a habit of doing that. It's like these people do a lot of fishing, you know. They let the fish think he's just been caught, and then they let him run again before they finally bring him in. Saves the line snapping. I think that's why they do it. So 28 miles to go. Last chance for these boys. There's one more sprint along the road before the sprint of the day in Strasbourg. See you in a moment. Welcome back. The Union flag is flying alongside the French one. We're on German soil now as we rejoin the Tour de France here, racing Strasbourg. This big city, which of course is in France. 7 riders are still clear. They're making it hard work back in the main field to bring them back into the fold. There's the latest gap, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Just 26 miles left to race. And German roads will take these riders in a circle back onto French roads for the last couple of miles of the day. Well, let's have a look how the race stood at the start of the day. These are the overall leaders of the Tour by way of the result in the time trial yesterday. Thor Hushovd is in yellow, same time as George Hincapie. Hincapie, remember, lost the race yesterday by 73 hundredths of a second, which equates to about 25 feet. Zabriskie, another American who won the first day last year, had to be content third this time, 4 seconds behind. And then there was Sebastian Lang in 4th place and Alejandro Valverde, big danger. Likely winner of the Tour, sitting there in 5th. They're the top 5 riders overall. Well, let's remind ourselves about stage 1 today. We started in Strasbourg, and that's in France. We've had a tour of the vineyards of France. We've now crossed the borders. We are racing for about 20 miles now on French roads. And this is an amazing country. It's surrounded here by different countries. And here's a nice close-up of the route for you here. Just towards the end, on the right-hand side, when we're in Alemannia or Deutschland or Germany, depending on the language you speak, and then we'll race back in to the city of Strasbourg. Big sprint finish coming up on the road of the Black Forest. Well, just look at that view, Paul. It's not good for a breakaway when you come onto a main autobahn like that, because the boys will see the leaders, although having said that, they don't seem too enthusiastic.
Well, just looking at that gap, we were getting official time gaps from the race radio of about 2 minutes and 12 seconds. I think it may well be a little bit closer to the 1 minute and 30-second mark, Phil, and very shortly they're going to line up and see this magnificent bridge in front of them to cross over the Rhine and get into Germany.
Well, this has been some hard riding, but they need to ride harder and harder because they don't want to catch them too late towards the finish. It takes a little while to reorganize your sprint leaders up to the right position. You need more strength to do that as well. So the teams will use certain riders only to chase down the breakaways. The other riders, which are the domestiques, will go into that pack, protect their sprinter and try and bring him to the front for the finish.
Going to be very nervous at the front end of the main field shortly, because the sprinters are always nervous on the first day of the Tour de France, because many of them have had a little bit of time out of competition, like Robbie McEwen, who made his comeback during the Tour of Switzerland, and he wants to get the first win under his belt. He'll take all kinds of risks, and it's going to be a very tumultuous sprint here, although it is a fairly safe one. There are about 3 corners in the last 3 kilometers, but the final kilometer for me is a magnificent sprinter's venue.
absolutely super venue. And just listening to comment being made in my earphones here from Marc Madio, who is the manager of the Française de Jeu team. That's the rider in the white up on the top left, who is now the best young rider. He's saying it's a perfect day, and in his first tour, he'll have great confidence. Here we go. We're crossing over the bridge here, which links France with Germany. We're leaving France. We're entering Germany. And in the next 35 kilometers or so, we'll be back into France for the dash to the line. The leading breakaway of 7, a lead of just over 2 minutes. And there is the bridge, and below us is the peloton.
Not very much, is it? Around about 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometers distance between the leading group of 7 riders and the main field, who are moving along slowly and steadily closer to that leading group of 7 riders. They are waiting, I think, Phil, to pounce. They know they've got this race under control. They know they're inside of 2 minutes now. What they will try and do, I think, is time the catch to perfection, because they realize if they catch them too early, there's going to be an awful lot of attacks on this first day on the open road.
Well, actually, a climb like this probably hurts the legs after a lot of flat riding, because it's quite a rise over the river here by the riders as they race back over the Rhone.
Very difficult for these guys. They're going to move down to the town of Offenburg in Germany before then starting to turn towards the west again, heading slightly to the north, and then they'll cross the border at Köln, and that leaves them just 9 kilometers to go from that final sprint point of the day to the finishing line.
There is one more a small sprint to come that brings them back into France. It's in the town of Köln, and that is where I think they'll have swept these leaders up by. And then if they have, then watch out for riders like Stuart O'Grady of Australia, because there's a valuable 6 points for the green jersey there. And so if that happens, he'll be looking to win sprints at the finish and as well. Well, that's a beautiful picture, I have to say. And it's now the peloton who's crossing this magnificent river that goes right down the Rhone Valley and splits France with Germany.
Well, the amazing thing here that I didn't know until a couple of days ago, this is the Rhine. This is the Rhine. This moves up towards the north. And in 1868, this was classified as an international waterway. And from the last bridge over the river in Bâle, it actually gives Switzerland free access to the sea in the north.
These were all strategic points in the wars, of course. And the Rhine there, one of the great rivers of Europe. And the riders, well, they just keep on pedaling. They don't even take in any of these beautiful views. But I know that many people watch the Tour de France on television because they love the views and the countryside, and they know the riders find the best roads. And days after they finish, they go on holiday on the same roads. And so just looking here at the man who's had a wonderful day out today, Marc Madio's over the moon in the team director's car. He says this in his first tour is a perfect day for me. And boy, this guy's going to have some confidence now as the tour continues. There he is, all smiles for Benoit Vaughan. We'll take another break. We are inching in on the finish, and there's still a beautiful shot for you today. That is our Trek aerial view of the Tour de France today, thanks to Trek, and what a magnificent sight it is. Welcome back on OLN as the Tour de France passes alongside this magnificent Rhone River. And there is Tom Bonen in the bunch. He's going to start to get a little bit twitchy in the next few miles. His team's at the front doing the work. He's having a chat at the back. Boy, that will change when we come back into into French territory. We are now racing on German roads here. The gap at last is coming down, 1 minute 48 seconds. These are the leaders. And Benoit Vaughan in the white jersey there, the Française des Jeux, is still the race leader on the road, but we still think that will change. 23 miles to go now. Johan van Summeren is the rider in the red on the right, sent up to do work for Robin McEwen, the sprinter. This is the massive crowd that's followed us around France. We're now in Germany, and it's still as big as ever. Funnily enough, cycle racing is extremely popular in Germany, and there was great sadness when Jan Ullrich didn't start the race because of that problem with the Operation Puerto. There's the route today. Makes the sprinters very happy. Just down the far right there, one more S. That's the third and final time bonus and points sprint of the day. And then it's all ground, all eyes to the mill for the big finish in the Black Forest Avenue in Strasbourg. There's the peloton going by. German police on the right, French doing the work. just seeing that the French police doing the work in Germany, Paul, the German police just watching.
Well, they have to just keep an eye on what the French police are doing on their soil. The French gendarmes moving across the border here with the permission of Germany to look after the riders. The gap coming down dramatically. A minute and a half now, the advantage of those 7 leaders at 21 miles to go. And that's inside of about 35 kilometers of racing. You know, if you look back there, Phil, you can actually just see the shimmering of the heat of the main field. They are certainly now just waiting to pounce. They're waiting to pull these riders back in, and I think they will try and do it at around about the 20-kilometer mark.
Well, these wide open flat roads now look right in the distance. There's outriders already coming, so they're going to be in the sight of the peloton now. You can see them again in the distance as they go around this traffic roundabout here and come together again. This is an angry bunch now. It should be a catch in the next 10 kilometers or so. And that means they'll be all together for the final big sprint, which comes with just 9 kilometers, just over 5 miles before the finish. And that brings us back into France here.
Well, they cross the Rhine once again and come back into France, but at that time they will be going absolutely flat out because they'll be just on 5 miles to go to the finish. There will be riders just touching their brakes, hoping to stay at the front end of the main field. That's Vasseur over there on the left-hand side, having a little chat with a rider from De Vitamont Lotto. They're trying to work as a cohesive group, different riders from different teams working together for the same cause. That's to pull back these 7 leaders and give the sprinters a chance to have their big day.
And that's what it will be, Paul, a day for the sprinters, because the men who are looking to win this race in 3 weeks' time in Paris, men like the Americans, Floyd Landis, Levi Leipheimer, George Hincapie, all the Australian, Cadell Evans, or anybody else like Alessandro Valverde, they will just concentrate in staying out of trouble today, because the timing is such that when the whole field finishes together, they all get the same time. It's just the riders on the sharp end over the line first get a handful of seconds time bonus. And the men who are aiming to win the Tour de France aren't interested in a handful of seconds. They are looking for the opportunity to take minutes.
But what you have to do if you're looking at winning the bike race overall is you have to actually ride fairly close to the front, because these finishes are so dangerous. You don't want to get involved in an accident on the run in towards the finish, because you could see your Tour de France get taken away for you. Remember a man by the name of Levi Leipheimer was big favorite for the Tour de France a couple of seasons ago.
Yep.
Crashed on the very first day, fractured his hip, was unable to compete.
Yep.
And for him, that would have been a very serious challenge for him, because that took away almost a whole season out of his career.
And that is what the big riders worry about on these opening days of the Tour de France. And they'll be more nervous in the next couple of days because we go on to much more narrow roads. But the sprinters just lick their lips because these are their stages. And they're not afraid of a rough and tumble. And they'll mix it with the best of them. So watch out for a hectic finish today, when we get down to Strasbourg, and when we catch the 7 leaders, who I think have done a great job at holding off this field.
They certainly have, and they will have something to take away from the day here this afternoon. The young man on the front there in the white jersey of Française des Jeux will change it for the white jersey as leader of the best young rider competition. Grabbed himself 10 seconds time bonus out on the road here this afternoon. I think they will get caught before that last time bonus at 9 kilometers to go, and then we'll see a different name of riders coming up to the front to try and get the points.
So looking at the peloton now, still working on what are they going to do. They have not yet to catch that breakaway, haven't they? So this is going to be very, very difficult if they don't shut it down in the next few miles or so. That rider's not in the race anyway. Well, don't forget the Tour de France coverage, of course, will continue on OLM for the next 3 weeks. Tomorrow, it'll be stage 2, and that travels into Luxembourg, and the sprinters will try yet again for a win. Our live coverage will begin tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. That's Eastern time. Sorry you out on the west, that's 5:30 a.m. your time. And then catch our prime time show at 8 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Pacific. Yes, that's the Tour de France here on OLM. We're live. And these boys are still wondering quite what to do with a breakaway of 7. The gap is now a minute and a half. So as they continue towards the line, they've got the crosswind now. Earlier on it was a headwind, now it's a crosswind. The crosswind is the worst wind for cyclists. You have to be very strong to hold your position in the peloton. And the strongmen, of course, love crosswinds because they get to the front, they lift the speed and they drive. And the weak riders tend to fall off the pace. These are the men, the rabbits of the day. As they continue towards the finish, they are still a minute and a half to the good. That means we could take a break, and I'll still be in the lead when we come back. See you in a moment. Welcome back to live pictures on the Route du Tour de France here. The peloton is still working out how do they catch the leaders. George Hincapie looking a bit more serious now. What a time trial he had yesterday. He lost it by 73 hundredths of a second. Nozal near his camera, his teammate. George says, hey pal, give us one of your bottles. He gets it. And Nozal doing his job as the helper, the team domestic. Those yellow numbers, by the way, mean that Team Discovery are the leaders of this race in the team classification after yesterday's time trial. And there they are, and there's the gap, 1 minute and 23. When are they going to catch? Well, I'm very strange, Paul. I mean, these are wide roads now, and yet the peloton has left them out there, let them dangle, and nobody wants to finish it off.
Status quo. They don't want to finish it off because the teams of the sprinters now are in a situation where they want to make sure they've got enough energy left in the team to do a proper lead out for their sprinters, which is why the front group has actually turned off as far as I can see. The way we're looking at those riders, there's not a lot of energy being put into surviving off the front end of the peloton. And the main field, actually, as we were saying, they weren't chasing. They're actually now starting to get themselves organized.
A little bit of roadworks here, making sure, perhaps it's making sure they don't take the wrong road. Yes, it is. Keep right, guys, otherwise you might be staying in Germany overnight as they now head towards the French frontier. A little bit earlier, Paul, we saw pictures of George Hincapie in that green jersey. People might be confused by that because, in fact, George isn't the leader in the green jersey competition. It is the man who won yesterday, Thor Hushoff, because on day one you win everything. But because of the publicity purposes of the Tour de France, the riders who are second, and Hincapie was second in the prologue, has to wear the other jersey. So for that reason, he has pulled on the Green Points leader's jersey. But in the competition, he is in fact in second place.
He's in second place. That will probably change this afternoon quite dramatically as well, because let's not forget there's a lot of points for the first man to cross the line. It's an important competition for many riders, the green jersey classification. There's 35 points for the man who wins the stage here this afternoon. There was only 15 points in the individual time trial yesterday, and the reason for that is because this is a competition which is basically aimed at honoring the sprinters.
Yes, and the boys in light blue there looking to guide Eric Zabel to yet another win and nudge near the magic 200 for him. It's getting a bit long in the tooth to take on the likes of Tom Bowen and Robbie McEwen, but he's such a competitor that he will be in amongst it. You can bet on that today. Just looking down there, trying to see if I can see Robbie McEwen. Even from our best seat in the house in the helicopter, he's always difficult to see. This man has the knack of hiding. Yellow jersey of Thor Hushoff is easy to see. As we pan across the green jersey of George Hincapie is easy. Have you got him?
He's just gone out of shot again. Number 65. You can see him just sitting in the middle there, keeping himself away from all of the wind, making sure that when he does put his nose into the wind, it'll be right at the very last moment. And the reason for that is he will be accelerating at full speed to try and get to the finish line first.
Well, no progress being made now on our computers. We're getting about 1 minute and 22 seconds, the gap. And they're not getting any closer. So very shortly we are heading up into the French territory again. And by then they really do want to be together. They don't want to be behind them, because if they are behind by then, it'll be difficult to catch up on the narrower roads as we run down towards Strasbourg. Under the bridge, big crowds. So looking here now, the peloton continue under the way, 124. In fact, they're starting to nose away again a little bit here. As they continue before a big crowd in Germany. Just look at this. The fact they've lost their star rider, Jan Ullrich, and yet there's still a massive crowd here. Racing for nearly 3 3/4 hours, and this breakaway has been away for all but about 3 minutes of it. So they've really had a long day in the saddle. How will that affect their riding over the next couple of days? I wonder. Well, there's plenty happening on OLN, of course, and a World Team Tennis now comes to OLN with stars Venus Williams, Todd Martin, Martina Hingis, and the return of that great man, Pete Sampras. It all starts Sunday, July 16th at 11:30 a.m. with the Newport Breakers taking on the 5-time WTT champion Sacramento Capitals. World Team Tennis on OLN, presented by Advanta. Behind the trees comes the peloton, stalking, waiting, still not shutting down as they now race towards the end. The gap just come down about 4 seconds to 1:18. Well, I would be getting a little concerned at 16 miles to go. As we look now at the leaders here, the gap last time check, 1:18 seconds. The crowd as big as ever. They're no doubt missing Jan Ullrich, but you'd never guess it down there because we're still on German roads here. This breakaway has been away for virtually all of the near 4 hours in the saddle today.
Well, I'll tell you what, don't worry too much, Phil, because 1:14 seconds with 26 kilometers to go is very easily doable because the teams of the sprinters have not yet started to crank it up. I talked a little earlier to you about Robbie McEwen wanting to get the yellow jersey before the race went into Belgium. I'd almost forgotten about the other guy from Belgium who's the world champion. And you know what? Tom Bonen did a magnificent ride yesterday in the prologue. He only lost 11 seconds in a part of the sport which is not his speciality. He'll be looking for the win here this afternoon because he would love to have the yellow jersey on his shoulders when the race goes into Belgium.
You bet your life he would, and Tom is very proud of the fact he is the world champion. We're seeing him today in the rainbow jersey, which is the right of the current world champion only. And that's the white jersey with the colours of the rainbow around his chest. Bonen has won 17 races this year, and today he'd love to win the 18th.
He certainly would like to win the 18th, and with that 20-second time bonus on the finishing line, he could very easily see himself get the yellow jersey off the shoulders of Thor Hushoff. But don't discount Hushoff, because Hushoff is a very good sprinter himself. He knows how to do this, and let's not forget, at 25 kilometers to go, that Thor Hushoff was the winner of the green jersey last year. That means he's a good sprinter.
Well, let's break away now, still making the best of it here. But remember, they're racing back onto French soil now. And once back on French soil, just a few kilometers down the road, they will be arriving here. That is the long straight of the Avenue de la Forêt Noire, the Black Forest finish for the riders in the Tour de France today here in Strasbourg. We'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to the Tour de France for the moment in Germany as we briefly visit the country, heading back into France at the end of day 2 and stage 1. Yes, the Tour de France is now bound back to the city of Strasbourg. 5 riders have now a tenuous lead. We are inside a minute advantage now. There we are, 51 seconds to be precise. The German flags fly proudly here. The peloton are beginning to get their act together at last. They are timing the catch once again to perfection. This is going to be a tough finish today too in Strasbourg, as the riders now wait to cross back out of Germany and into French territory. Well, one man who knows all about the Tour de France who's working with us here, that's Frankie Andreu. We've sent him out onto the finishing line to tell us all about the finish. Frankie.
Today is the first stage of the Tour de France, and it's the first chance for the sprinters. Today's 184 kilometers long, but in the final 3 kilometers, there's about 5 corners. When the peloton enters into this, it's really going to string out the group into one long line because they're going 40, 45 miles an hour. On the front, watch for teams to be grouped together and working together to keep the speed as high as possible to prevent any of the riders from attacking and going away lone. Right here, there's a left-hand corner right before the 1 kilometer to go banner. This is where the sprinters are going to be setting up, fighting for position, hitting elbows, bumping into each other, to fight for position and to keep in position right before they launch their final sprint at 200 meters to go. Some of the most exciting Tour stages to watch are the sprints, but as a rider, it's very nerve-wracking, it's very crazy. You have to stay focused and stay in front because one crash can totally take you out of the Tour de France.
Exactly right, Frankie, and has happened in the past. We are building up ourselves now for a great sprint finish. Look at the tempo riding. You see the pink jersey of Lampre have come up now. They're riding for their sprinter, Daniela Bernati, who's also riding well. 50 seconds is the gap. So as we continue now, 7 riders in the lead, and they're coming back towards the field. Just looking at the faces here, Paul, of these riders now. There's a bit of panic here. It looks as though Echebria's had enough for the day. He's sat up.
Well, there's a bit of panic, Phil, because of the fact they've pulled out the team cars now, and these riders, once that starts to happen, they know the writing's on the wall. They know it is almost over. They've had a wonderful day out on the Tour de France. They've led the race. They've been 5 minutes in front. Now, I would say next time we get a time check, we'll probably hear something like a 30-second advantage. Then all of a sudden, they'll be back in the main field with the rest of the guys.
Well, Echevarria, in fact, he's just about sitting on the back here. Maybe, I just thought we were going to have a little attack there. Very often the breakaway tries to attack itself, and a desperate moment comes to try and scamper to the line. But, you know, just on 20 kilometres to go, the banner should be over the road very shortly. We're looking at around about 3/4 of a minute, 48 seconds. That shouldn't be keeping these riders away too long. The last sprint of the day before the big sprint comes at 9 kilometres to go, just over 5 miles.
Well, I'm hearing over race radio that a lot of riders from Team CSC are moving to the front of the pack, and that may well be to try and do something special for Stuart O'Grady, because O'Grady is lying in 6th place, just 4 seconds. Phil, looking back at the prologue tour of the Tour de France over the years, I don't remember ever seeing so many riders within 10 seconds of the winner. There are 11 riders within 10 seconds of the winner of the stage yesterday, so almost any of those riders have got a very good chance of getting themselves the lead. There's a time bonus at 9 kilometres to go, and there's 20 seconds on the line.
It's all building up to a great deal of pressure on Paul Sherwen, if you ask me, because he's going to have to tell me who the new leader is as they cross the line. Well, they're under that 20 kilometres to go banner now. I take my hats off to them. A long, hot day in the saddle. 4 hours they have been in the lead. Here comes the cavalry, and there's a lot of different teams now riding on the front. The pink jerseys there are for Daniela Bonatti. The bluer jerseys are for the world champion Tom Bonen. The light blue jerseys are indeed for Eric Zabel, and the red and white jerseys tucked in there as well. They're for Robbie McEwen. This is going to be one terrific finish today.
It's going to be a big sprint for some big boys, and it's going to be very exciting with speeds approaching 40 miles an hour as they come into town here of Strasbourg. Still nobody taking complete control at the front end of the main field. Still a whole consortium of the teams of the sprinters keeping the pace nice and high. You know, Stuart O'Grady will find a very good ally if he tries to get some points at 9 kilometres to go, because Giovanni Lombardi, the Italian rider who is on Team CSC in the past, has been a brilliant sprinter himself, and of course he comes from a very good track background, as does Stuart O'Grady.
He does. He's well known in Australia, of course. He was once disqualified in the Commonwealth Bank Classic for dangerous riding in a sprint finish. Since then he's been an Olympic champion, and he's been a very good finisher too. Well, he's in there, a lead-out man for Stuart O'Grady. We're going to find out at the moment as they head up towards the finish. And O'Grady, he can mix with the best here. He was the first Australian to nearly get his hands on that green jersey competition. He'd like to be there again. Just checking over his shoulder there to see where they are. They know they're coming now. They are hoping they can still slip away here.
I'll tell you what, Phil, there's a lot of riders, their heart rates now will start to be reflecting how difficult the race is starting to get. We get an idea of how tough it is for some of these riders. They can reach a maximum of 185 beats a minute, you know, in a race like this. And if it's not all that difficult, you'll probably see them riding around about the 140 beats a minute mark. And at the moment, I think in the main field, we're cruising along at around about 43 kilometres an hour. That's an indication that they certainly haven't started to turn up the gas, especially on board Team Quickstep, because Matteo Tossato, I think, is the man who's going to line himself up for Tom Bonen in around about 10 kilometres time.
Well, just looking at the wonderful images there coming from our French motorbike cameras there. He's not as close as you think he is, but those lenses took us right inside that breakaway. The urgency on their faces. Wegman, well, he looked pretty happy, because even if he is caught, he'll be on the podium tonight to receive the first jersey as leader in the Tour of the King of the Mountains. And the best young rider, that should now be for the man who's been here all day, Benoit Von Renard. He should be up there as well. But who's going to take the green and who is going to take the yellow? And that will be down to the sprint.
That will be down to the sprint. 20 seconds for the first man to cross the line, 12 seconds for second, 8 seconds for third, and that's going to be a rapid calculation. Thor Hushovd has got all that information in his head. He knows who can beat him of the sprinters, and he'll be keeping a very close eye on that. His team, I think, have done so much work here this afternoon. As you can see, a number of Crédit Agricole riders at the back end of the group. Thor Hushovd is basically going to have to try and sprint on his own. He's going to have to use Tom Bonen's wheel. He's going to have to keep a very close eye on Robbie McEwen, and of course he will be keeping a very close eye on Stuart O'Grady, who is only 4 seconds behind him.
And I just thought of another sprinter looking at the leaky gas boys at the back, Magnus Bagstedt, who lives in South Wales with his Welsh wife Megan, and is of course a Swede.
Well, Big Maggie, he's going to be ready for the sprint here this afternoon.
Just looking under the bridge there now. The latest news we're getting is around 24 seconds the gap. We're about 17 kilometres, just outside, 10 miles from the finish. There you can see them. The quarry is in sight. The charge is on. It looks like McEwen's boys are now working pretty hard. They've got the red shoulders on the jersey. The light blue ones to the right are for Eric Zabel's Milram team. And the left picture, the lighter blue, this is going to be a commentator's nightmare, that is the Gerolsteiner team, and they have two very good sprinters this year in Peter Rollig and David Kopp.
Well, they're going to be thinking about getting themselves up there. That was at the back of that line as well, was, of course, Levi Leipheimer. There is the leading group of 7. They're almost in the same straight now as the main field. The gap down to inside of 10 seconds. Very shortly, it will all be back in the fold. And then we'll have to see which of the teams of the sprinters wants to take up the pace-making very early on. There's a little bit of a flurry of an attack going on here. A bit of a surprise here, Phil, because as far as I'm concerned, it's almost over bar the shouting. Somebody just wants to prolong the agony.
They have been in the lead for 166 kilometres. That's almost 100 miles, and there is an attack, and it's gone by Walter Benito. I think we should have predicted that, Paul. This is a rider who has ridden 7 tours. This is his 7th journey round France. He's making a last desperate bid for victory.
Well, a last desperate bid to survive a little bit longer as far as I'm concerned. We're looking at around about 10 miles to go to the finish. If you just look down the road there, you can see hovering in the distance a big dark cloud. Well, that dark cloud is the main field all over the road. They're getting ready to pounce. They won't allow somebody to steal the glory from the sprinters here this afternoon. They will get themselves organised very quickly.
Well, just on 10 English miles to go. It would take a very good cyclist about 21 minutes. A Tour de France rider about 20. He's never going to hold these boys off for 20 minutes.
No, he needs to be able to ride at the moment for around about that distance at something like 50 kilometres an hour, while the main field, Phil, they can turn it up to 55 kilometres an hour quite easily. But look at the way he's throwing all of the last little bits of energy he's got into this, hoping he's going to survive. He's got the gap over the group that he was with. It's Nicolas Portal who is halfway across the gap. And Benito, you know, started the day an awful long way down. I think he's just been joined there by Portal with a gap of around about 15 minutes back to the remnants of that group.
Well, if Benito was to win a stage, will celebrate his 34th birthday 3 days after this race reaches Paris. And that would be a great birthday present to remember the days he was 33, that's for sure. But it looks as though we've got 2 groups now. Some are surrendering, others are trying to drive for home, and it's being led by Walter Benito, who's only ever won 3 races in his life. No big names, but you know, not all professional riders win races. They are in the team to help others win races. They have a very important role to play.
Well, a lot of riders never win a race in their whole career. There was an Italian rider a number of years ago by the name of Roberto Conti. He only won 1 race in his whole career.
Good win.
But it was a pretty impressive one at the top of the Alpe d'Huez. Well, the remnants of the group are being caught there. 4 of that 7-man group are back in the main field. Walter Benito is still on his own, and I think halfway across the gap to catching him up. It was the Frenchman Nicolas Portal of the Caisse d'Epargne Lille Baleares team.
Well, look at the face here now. This is the hard part of any Tour de France. You've led for over 168 kilometres, and you are now trying to ride the whole field off your back wheel. Walter Benito hasn't won a race since he won the Grand Prix Le Telegram in August 2003. It would be very nice to be first to Strasbourg.
Well, it would be very nice to be first to Strasbourg. He may survive a little bit longer. Those are the 2 guys that got halfway across the gap. They are 10 seconds behind Walter Benito. But looking at the attitude and the position they've got there, Phil, I think they've given up. That's Wegman on the left-hand side, Portal on the right-hand side. They know the main field is on their tail. They're just going to leave now 1 man at the front. Walter Benito, who I'm not happy to be the bringer of doom to a situation like this, but he's going to get caught.
Well, only 1 remains now. Portal, Wegman, get himself cleaned up, ready for the presentation for the King of the Mountains. Meanwhile, now they're going to have to try and hang on to this field as it starts to get into top gear for the finish. Sprinters don't race for 2nd place, so they'll want Benito back in the fold here. Only a win is good enough for the sprinters. The drive is now on. They know 1 man has done what they always fear, tried to beat them to the finish.
Well, when you look at the 1 man who's at the front of the race, Walter Benito, he can probably ride on his own for a sustained period after being in the breakaway for a long time for about 46 or 47 kilometres an hour. But what you'll find behind is when the teams of the sprinters start working, start using the slipstreaming effect, especially because there's a lot of riders prepared to come to the front and set the pace, they can bring the average speed of the main field up to 55 kilometers an hour over this last 12 kilometers. They can snap up a minute's advantage on Walter Benetton in the click of your fingers.
Well, we're looking at a Frenchman. He's still on German soil. He'll soon be back in France, Walter Benetton. And you know, the French have not had a lot to cheer in the Tour de France since Lance Armstrong started winning it every year. But today they've had a marvellous ride. They've had a lot of riders in the breakaway moves, and now they're trying to win the stage here. The gap is still 35 seconds. It's still not over as we race now into the last 12 kilometres of the day. Well, just looking down at the wheels here of Walter Benetton. Nice selection of gears. Got 20 to choose from. He'll want only one now, the highest pedaling gear on the bicycle. That's what he wants now. Welcome back. We're still looking at Benetton heading up towards the third and final sprint of the day. He is checking over his shoulder because the peloton are snapping at his heels here. But look at that. He gets it. He gets 6 seconds time bonus here. And this is Walter Benetton. And look at this now as the peloton comes up. This is George Hincapie going, and he's pulling out Crédit Agricole. That wasn't expected. Is George going to hang on? No, he is not, but he gets enough. Now, if none of those riders get a top 3 finish, Hincapie will be in the race lead of the Tour de France. He has wiped out his overnight deficit with a 2-second time bonus. That is what you call a cheeky Hincapie, because the hats off too to the rider from Crédit Agricole, who chased him down there, desperate to take at least a 4-second time bonus off him and stop Hincapie moving any further ahead. Well, that was a superb, attentive move by George Hincapie. We are 9 kilometres from the line. Well, I wonder what that did to Matteo Tassal. We can find out. There it is. Look at that. It's shot up now. It was a 140. He's gone up to 159 beats per minute in our Quick-Step Energetic heart rate monitor there. Boy, I'm not surprised. Hats off to George there. He was thinking about that one. As we look down on the peloton now, we're racing back onto French roads here. And the field, boy, has that come alive now as they catch Walter Benetton, I think. I can't believe what George did. Hats off to him, Paul. That was a great result, because now, if there's no bonuses for the big boys at the front, he could be the leader today. Crafty.
You see, Phil, you always have to pay attention. Never give up. He admitted to us, didn't he, that he was not very happy about losing by 73 hundredths of a second. And I don't think Thor Hushoff was expecting that at all. And Hincapie, he's a very clever man, and that is an indication to me that Hincapie is motivated now, Phil, to be the leader of this Team Discovery Channel team for the Tour de France.
Well, absolutely fabulous riding by Hincapie. Very attentive too by the Crédit Agricole rider there to snatch that second place bonus. He reacted on reflex, I think, to try and help out his team leader, Thor Hushoff. 4.4 miles to go as we keep you informed in both kilometres and miles. That's about 7 kilometres. Yesterday's prologue distance still to ride to the line. Result confirmed that it was Sebastian Hinault, famous name but no relation to Bernard, who managed to stop George getting 4 seconds there. But 2's enough if the dice fall right at the finishing line.
Well, that's what it's all about on the first day of the Tour de France. It really is like a throw of the dice, because there's still a 20-second time bonus to be had on the finish line. Tom Boonen is only 11 seconds off the lead. Now, if Tom Boonen is to win the stage and George Hincapie doesn't finish anywhere in the top 3, then Boonen will be the new leader. If we were to stop the race right now, Hincapie's just got himself 2 seconds taken off his overall standings, and that gives him a 13-second advantage over Tom Boonen at the moment. But we've not got to the finish line yet.
No, and the peloton now changing shape all of the time here as we get inside 6 kilometres to go now. And don't forget that out there, a lot of these riders are wearing those polar heart rate monitors. Matteo Tassartes at the moment, I can tell you, is beating at 175 beats per minute, which is only just about 10 beats off his maximum for the day. So he's under pressure, and he's going to have to lead out his teammates shortly.
That's why he's under pressure right now. He's moved to the front. He's somewhere in the gaggle of riders between 15th and 20th. He's thinking about the position, of course, of his man Tom Boonen, the world champion. There's the yellow jersey. Thor Hushoff enjoyed his day in yellow this afternoon. He probably wants to prolong the experience, because last time he got the yellow jersey a couple of years ago, Phil, he only wore it for a single day. Today, I think he'd like to keep it for just a little bit longer. 5 kilometers to go.
Under the banner at 5, back onto French soil now. The crowds tell you the way the riders have to go towards the finish. We're racing into the avenue of the Black Forest here. For somebody, it is going to be a great day, and if it's the right person who's already amongst the leaders, he'll be pulling on a maillot jaune at the end of it, and it could be George Hincapie right now.
Theoretically, over the last kilometre, there are no real dangerous corners. Most of the corners in the last 3 kilometres are what we call sweepers in the sport of professional cycling. The kind of corners you hardly have to touch your brakes on. The riders will be going round at close to 50 kilometres an hour. Still a little bit dodgy. Milram now taking over control at the front end of the main field. Liquigas getting themselves sorted out as well. There may be Magnus Bagstead, the big Swede, is going to have a go. Stuart O'Grady is right in the middle there as well. O'Grady, let's not forget, is now 6 seconds off the lead of George Hincapie. He too will be looking for a top 3 finish.
I think this is a Christian Nice of Germany on the front for Milram, because his object now is to keep the pace so high nobody can get off the front of this bunch and nip away to the finishing line, because the sprinters want the pack to stay together and take each other on. 4 kilometres left.
4 kilometres left. You've got to think about the sprinters now. Tom Boonen is right up there. He will be right in the middle. We're thinking about Eric Zabel as well for Team Milram. And, of course, other men who will move up to the front, like Robbie Hunter of South Africa, perhaps. But, of course, Robbie McEwen is a man you can never discount on the first day of racing. And Alejandro Valverde is right up there in that white jersey. He is the leader of the Pro Tour, and that is rather interesting. This is at the back of the race. This looks like Danilo De Luca going backwards.
Well, this is a big surprise. Danilo De Luca doesn't want to give away time here. He's a man for the future of this race. Don't worry about his prologue time, but he's sat up and gone off. Now, that is not good news.
Well, he's had a little bit of an infection over the last couple of days. He has been on antibiotics, and he's going to lose himself probably a couple of minutes before the end of today's stage, but there's still a chance to recover. But his hopes of winning the Tour de France this year, well, they've just gone out of the back window. Still a bit of confusion at the front. There's a Phonak rider right up there. I wonder if Robbie Hunter's going to have a go.
I think they're all going to. This is going to be one terrific sprint finish. Good luck to the commentator. No, I didn't mean that. Right, we're going into the last 3 kilometres of the race now. It's a bit narrow there, isn't it? There is the 3 kilometres banner now. Remember, it's only the last kilometre where we're dead straight. Rabobank now for Oscar Freire, a 3-time world champion, trying to drag him into the pictures. And Lundqvist there, the champion of Sweden, also the youngest man in the race, sitting third wheel.
Well, Oscar Freire is a very enigmatic rider. You know, sometimes he can win races, other times he's completely injured, but he has been world champion on 3 occasions. A little bit of chaos now. There is Valverde in the white jersey. I cannot see for the moment. Tom Boone and his team don't seem to have got themselves under control here. Everybody all over the road now. The first sprint of the day in the Tour de France. Everybody's nervous. Everybody's ready to try and get victory. It's absolute chaos out there. You dare not touch your brakes. You touch your brakes at this moment now, you'll find yourself losing 150 places in the main field.
Well, it's who can pick the best wheel now, because there is no one team, as we suspected, can control this race. There's no Team Discovery. There's no Silver Bullet team of the years gone by of Fassa Bortolo. So the sprinters are going to look for the strong men and try and pinch them off the other sprinters.
Well, no organisation, still no one team dominating this as we inside now 2 kilometres to go to the finish. They're all over the road. There's the green jersey of Hincapie in around about 10th or 15th place. There's the yellow jersey of Thor Hushovd. He's down into about 10th place. You know, he's got to do something special. Thor Hushovd, I think, today may well come up with the goods and try and get himself a top 3 place. I still could not see Robbie McEwen, but you know what? For Australia, that's not really a problem.
No, that's absolutely normal. The 2 riders on the front right now are leaky gas riders trying to get Magnus Bagstead, the Swedish rider who lives in Wales and in Great Britain, to the front. As they come off that bottom bend now, our camera's going to have to stay away from the riders. It's fire all the way here. And Bagstead is, in fact, about 6 riders down at the moment. He's not onto the wheel of his teammate. Milram are trying to get Zabel. They are the light blue. And Bonacci's team are also getting in the play here now. This is flat out a last little shot here. Thor Hushovd and Zabel's off to the right. 3 men down dead centre. 4 men, because Oscar Freire is there as well. As they come round, that's the last corner. Take it wide. Breathe deeply into the final kilometre.
1 kilometre is an awful long way to go in a sprint like this. Eric Zabel is in a superb position up there into about 3rd. Oscar Freire a little bit too much to the front for me. In 2nd place, Zabel just pausing a little. He's gone to the front. He doesn't want to be there, but you can see now the yellow jersey moving forward. He has a teammate with him. Thor Hushovd is up there into 2nd. Who is in 3rd place? But it's Robbie McEwen.
It's Robbie McEwen. This man appears like he takes the invisible cloak off in Harry Potter. He's suddenly sat there. Third wheel now, McEwen. Zabel is fourth wheel. Tor Hushoff is riding. Remember, no yellow jersey, has won a stage wearing yellow since Mario Cipollini in 1997. Breaking on the far right now. We're trying to get Gerolsteiner. And the world champion in the white jersey goes. He's the man to beat. Zabel tries to take his wheel. And McEwen there boxed a little bit. Tom Bonan looks over his shoulder. He's got McEwen, his worst man, on his wheel now. As he had Jimmy Casper coming on the far right now. And now it's Zabel trying to go with Jimmy Casper here now. And Boonen, I think, is beaten. Tommy Boonen, it may be a French day this. As on the far right of our picture, there's a battle, but it's going to be on the line. A win for Jimmy Casper, I think. And if that's the way the Tour de France is going to go, that is without doubt the finest victory. And I hate to say it, we never mentioned him all day until he hit the line. What a win.
What a win. He was in the right place. He battled it out with the kings of the sport, the kings of the road, the fastest men in the sport of professional cycling. Tom Bonan was completely caught out. No team around him. He was waiting to start his sprint, but for Tom Bonan, he didn't have anyone there to lead him out. But when you saw Jimmy Casper, he took the risk. He saw the moment. He just grabbed it. Eric Zabel wasn't too far away. Let's just have a look at this one more. You can see on the front there, Tom Bonan looking over his shoulder. Yellow jersey's gone down. I don't know when this happened. The yellow jersey has gone down.
Well, we never saw this. There was a twitch. We never saw the crash, and he's going to have stitches in that arm. Well, what a tragedy. Tor Hushoff is a sprinter. He mixes it with the best. He looked to be good. We did not see the crash. I think it may have happened, Paul, after the crossing of the line. I'm not too sure exactly where he is, but I think he's after the line here.
I think he's very much after the line there, because I could just see the tribune to the right-hand side. They're trying to hold that. That looks like a very nasty injury to me for Tor Hushoff. He was sprinting it out with all of the top men there. Let's have a look there. You can see Hushoff over on the right-hand side, right up against the barriers. You can see Tom Bonan is looking back. Robbie McEwen is there in about second or third place. Casper starts his sprint on the left. Zabel tries to follow. It looks to me as if Tor Hushoff is battling to come up through the inside. He makes his place. He pushes Robbie McEwen out. They're up to the finishing line now. Hushoff is dropping back a fraction. Tom Bonan is also giving up in the sprint there, but still you can see right over there, Tor Hushoff sits up before the line. He's crossed the line. He's crashed after the line. Phil, we're going to have to do some serious adding up now.
Well, in fact, of course, our camera stayed with the winners, but he's fallen underneath us here. And that is a tragedy. The happiness of yesterday in Strasbourg, now the tragedy of being an injured victim in the Tour de France on the stage here in Strasbourg. Hincapie, too, could well be the leader of the Tour de France tonight. I've got pens and paper flying everywhere here, but I think he may well be the leader of the Tour de France because of that small bonus he got early on. It should have worked out for him. There was only a few seconds spreading the top boys, and of course we'll all know the answer to this very, very shortly, because the judges have the same problem. But the biggest concern tonight, I think now, is what about poor old Tor Hushoff. Take a look at this. In the end, the big sprinter Bonan here to win found he couldn't do it and quickly fell back out of it. So too did Robbie McEwen. Hushoff was taking risks to get up on the inside, no doubt about that. The reason being, of course, a few seconds would have kept him in that leader's yellow jersey, and that was his main aim. Oh, well, as we look down here on a city of Strasbourg, which has hosted the Tour de France so well, and today it's ended in great sadness for Tor Hushoff. I'm just wondering indeed whether in fact Tor can possibly continue. You know, when you get an injury in cycling, we'll try and see these pictures again, see if it tells us anything. There is a lot of blood, but when it's all cleaned up, it may not be serious, and let's hope that is the case with the God of Thunder, Tor Hushoff. There's no doubt who won it though. Pushed on the line there. It was a brilliant finish there by Jimmy Casper, and that's his best win. It's his fourth win of the year, and far and away the best win of his career, which began back in 1998. We'll come back and we'll bring you right up to date with everything on the stage of the Tour de France.